Morning. Today I'd like to talk to you about Canada's current housing crisis and how it's getting worse, not better. And the future is going to get worse, not better. Now, those two pictured there aren't completely responsible for the explosion in Canada's housing and turning it into the crisis it is. What they are guilty of is knowingly making it cross Canada. Since the 90s, Vancouver saw continuous spikes in housing, mostly due to organized crime from offshore laundering money through British Columbia casinos. Toronto saw it start 10 years or so later. Now in 2020, when the Bank of Canada said interest rates will be low until 2023, and the government told everyone it's okay to borrow to get the economy started, then the housing crisis in the two largest cities became a national housing crisis. Small cities and towns saw prices go up where they never did before. Small communities of 100,000 or less population saw prices almost double for homes in 3 years, causing the rarely talked about rents to go up. From the Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast, they went up almost everywhere. Personally, I don't know who's buying all these houses on such a large scale. I mean, most of the population in 2020 was on reduced salaries, earnings, due to the lockdowns. But the buying was happening. And 2020 was a record year for sales, surpassed by 2021. Impossible, but it happened. So who was buying the houses? Houses in the larger markets, you'd be getting 750,000, offering 700. Houses in the larger markets would be asking, let's say for 750,000 as an example. They would be getting 850,000. Every house was selling for over asking price. So if it really wasn't on fire, it sold. After the lockdowns came the interest price hikes and immigration increase. Double whammy. So put those two together. You got 1 million people coming to Canada and less houses to sell due to the interest costs. What you get is nowhere for these people to live. And quite frankly, on a future video, the 1 million people, that was a number created by Statistics Canada, government agency, that has lied or put down incorrect numbers on multiple occasions. And they are the only bureau that everybody goes to for statistics. And they get them wrong. They were out by over 1 million people came in. They assumed people just went home. Didn't know, didn't check. So they're going to update their way of doing business, which means it will happen again. Back to the case of immigration. So with rates still going up in 2023, the government could have changed the immigration numbers down. Okay, but they didn't. So do they care? Well, obviously not. Otherwise, they would have done something. Now, the universities, adding to the immigration explosion, were bringing in as many international students as they could, because international students pay a higher price for the tuition. Once these students are finished, the universities help these students with work permits on the campus, which leads to residency. You get it? It's compounding the problem, making it worse. Everything seems to be working against Canada. So you have high immigration, high housing prices and rents, and little housing inventory to sell. So what else could go wrong? Well, lower building permits. In January 2022 through August 2022, 76,000 permits were issued. In the same time, January to August of 2023, 46,000 permits were issued, 40% loss. Now, Canada usually builds 280,000 houses per year as an average. And the government plans to build 6 million by 2030. Well, just quick math tells you that number can't possibly reached. Maybe 40% of that number will be reached, of that 6 million. They'll barely get 2.5 million houses built, but they're bringing in all these people. So the facts are all pointing to a catastrophe happening with low demand, high prices, high rents, and low selection. So the facts of how Canada's housing are pointing to another catastrophe happening by 2030, where you'll have high demand, high prices, high rents, and low selection. None of this is good for housing. Now, if the government cared, that would be one thing. But when the immigration minister says this summer they might increase the immigration from 1 million to 1.3 million, then clearly they either do not care or do not listen. The reality of the construction industry is they're dealing with both labor shortages and dealing with material shortages. So the construction industry cannot even build the homes that are needed. So what does the future of the housing look like? Now, how does this affect Canadians who rent? If someone moves out of an apartment, the landlord will double the rent for the new tenant, or very close to. No improvements, just higher rent. My guess is landlords will look over tenants very closely to make sure they can pay these high rents, because they're not about to get stuck with somebody who doesn't pay. Now, if you make $3,000 a month and your rent is $2,000, well, how do you afford that? If two people make $3,000, then after taxes, utility, food, they still don't make double the rent. How do they make that happen? You would need to earn $6,000 a month to afford rent. And what will the rental space even look like? With vacancies on average below 3% anywhere in Canada and below 1% in the biggest cities, you really are trapped inside your apartment once you sign that dotted line. If you're stuck with your apartment, would you even bother complaining if something is going wrong? Unless it's a big issue, plumbing or electrical. 1%. 1% vacancy rate. Now, how does this affect Canadian homeowners? Well, it's not much different than the renters. Let's say you own $1 million house and have a $500,000 mortgage. If you sell the house and take the $500,000 in your pocket, you now have a problem. Where do you live? The area you were in is in the million range. So you'd need, any area like that, you would need a $500,000 mortgage, and a new $500,000 mortgage is at 6%. And you have to be approved at 8%. So the new monthly mortgage rate at 6% would be 50% higher rate than you were paying. So you'd be better off to not sell in the first place. Now, if you do not meet the requirements of a mortgage and you stay in your house, you're now trapped in your house that you're paying for. This is the newest part of the housing crisis. You can't move. In fact, studies have shown most people cannot afford to buy the house they currently have a mortgage on. This is insane. But this is Canada. This is their Canada. As the population will continue to age, you have more and more homeowners where their earnings, because of their age, are flat or possibly retiring and decreasing. This means most people over 50, especially over 60, in Canada are not selling their homes unless they are moving to some lower housing district. This means less supply pretty much anywhere in Canada, less choice. Now, Canadian banks roughly have 25% of their mortgage books. The owners are behind on their payments. So you get people who cannot pay the mortgage payments in Canada. Some mortgages are now in excess of 30-year mortgages or payback to the banks. Some are being rewritten at 40, 50, 60, even 70 years payback of the mortgage. If you ever can get that mortgage paid off, the homeowner can never make any money on that investment. It's all gone to the banks. Now, this is all devastating news for homeowners. And for the most part, you got two ignorant politicians that are the biggest cause of Canada's housing crisis. What do you say? Please like and subscribe. Lay your comments down in the comment section. I'd like to hear them. Till next time, take care.